play safe, watch safe. The safety mechanics are for you guys too. Always do the right thing for you. Thank you very much. Now on to the thing we just warned you about.
But tonight is not about me. Tonight is about this guy and his players who are out gallivanting across the country doing all sorts of role play, cool stuff. And it's their 1 year anniversary.
Yeah, it is our 1 year anniversary. And that's kind of crazy. I was thinking about that this week. And because Eric and I were talking about going from Awakened to Enlightened in terms of like tiers of play. And I admitted one of the things that I struggle with is that when I was a younger GM, like, a 14-year-old undiagnosed kid with ADHD and no patience, that I would just fire advancements at my players. Just like without no rhyme or reason, just like here's this, like, I'm just sharing all the cool rocks in the back of the book with you. And, I messed up some stuff because you mess up telling stories. It's this kind of thing that happens. And
every time.
So I admitted, like, I'm feeling a little, like, I'm feeling hesitant, and maybe I need to settle down a little bit of that hesitation and just, like, go for it. And Erica was like, well, yeah, we're at game like 23 on the stream, and it was something like over a dozen games before the stream. So, 30 plus games we're allowed to, like, it's very reasonable. Like, yeah, you're right. Absolutely. And so that was just thinking about how long this game has been running. It's been,
I know
it's really nice.
We've got questions from the crowd, and I have a question that I just thought of. That I'm going to jot down. But before we do the questions, I have, for those of you who've been with me here at TTRP Theater, you've probably seen in the past, I've dropped a couple of the, a look back video, or a look back is what I call them. I did one that was our humble beginnings when I tried to DM 5e Grimdark and in the old Greyhawk zone world, because that's where I played D&D when I was a kid. And
this is perfect timing because apparently we're getting raided.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Is it a real raid, or is it one of those we're getting raided by? We got raided by a slew of bots on Friday night. Whoop, whoop. Welcome, raiders. Oh, boys from the Baltic Star. Nice. So, it was the old stuff. And then we did one of Beth, and she was my pro 5e who came in and said, here, hold my beer, and showed me how to do it. And I used to do for her streams what I do for you. And she was one of the longest running we had. And it was only because we switched to the KULT channel, which was when our history with you began.
Yes.
That she ended up, I think she's streaming on another Twitch channel from last I heard. I haven't been able to catch them live, but she's still at it. But because we kind of went to all KULT for about 4 months, they went to go move on to a different thing. So I made one for her. Now I've made one for you guys.
I want to see this.
To celebrate your 1 year. So it's about a 7-minute video or so. All of these videos I have put onto a unlisted playlist, and they are going to drop on Patreon. So Patreon, if you had a chance to see one in the past, they were on YouTube. I mothballed them or put them behind a paywall today. So for those of you who are Patreon members, you will get a chance to see these. If you are what would they call that? A subject of the video, you will probably also have access to the links. So
yeah. Well, it's, like, for the price of a half of a cup of coffee, you can get a higher number of shiny internet rocks than normal. And I feel like that trade is like super high value.
Hey everyone, it's Old Curtis, aka CT, aka Curtis Black, Executive Director of TTRP Theater Media and the positive thinking producer of How to Play KULT Divinity Lost video series. I wanted to stick in a quick thank you and encourage you to take advantage of the free subscription if you find value in what you're watching or think others might. Just click this red subscribe button and you're done. If you don't want to miss our next drop, click the little bell icon and you'll get a notification when it does. All of that works the old YouTube algorithm and helps in showing this video to more KULT Divinity Lost fans like me and you. Giving us a thumbs up or down also helps, but more than that, it helps us know what works and what needs fixed or cut, and drop a comment to tell us what we got right or wrong. All of that helps us improve and bring you the content you enjoy from our little theater. Thanks.
A great year. There's a snippet from every episode.
That's so cool. And it, like bracketing it with like the debrief from the first game. That's like, that's so cool. I'm very emotional about it. I really thank you for your work. Like that was great.
Oh,
like,
it's my pleasure.
So cool.
I enjoy it. It's been a great show. I have often lauded it as our best KULT Divinity Lost show. I only never talked about it too loud when Sinners and Saints was running, only because all Adam has to do is get on screen and he pulls 30 viewers in, because
he's extremely good.
Yes, he's awesome.
Like he is extremely good. His production quality is fantastic and he tells a great story.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I did the Sinners and Saints and everything after that he's done. This explosion of all of his shows, he's done completely on his own. So all I've had to do is just give him a little advice here and there, but he's just worked it out. Very impressive. I'm excited to see where we can go with that.
he's an all-rounder.
I know we had some questions, at least one question that I had noted from the audience, but one of the things that I had noted as well as, because this is a comparison to my other longer campaign, is from the story that you had in your mind as to how you thought it was going to go, as to where it is now. What's the, I don't know, you can give a percentage or ratio or however you want to do it, but how much has changed?
Well, the question is functioning off a piece of mythology, which is that I plan. I really wish I could sit down and be like, oh yes, I'm a creative genius and I have stacks of notebooks this high. Like I have 3 notebooks, most of them, they're mostly empty with some scribbles and some notes. I have some like pieces of paper from the little half-sized scratch pads we get at work from our metals vendors. Yeah. Like, and it's just deranged script. It's like the crap on the walls in a scene, like the beginning of Lord of Illusions, like all the Clive Barker art on the wall of the cultist. Like that's what my notes look like. It's just against, it's just psychic spaghetti.
Mine are too. And it never makes it in. My best games are always the ones that I prep the less. Chaotic Story, thanks for all those gifted subs, man. That's awesome. Really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh.
For those of you, since we're getting close to Christmas, since I've negotiated trademarks with a few people, I know we do have a link for a merch thing down below, and I'd hope to have a little bit more of a shill for that at this point. But if you do go over there, there's a couple of Manhattan t-shirts and not a 9 or not better than a 9 KULT t-shirt, a couple other things, as well as the TTRP logo stuff. If you're thinking about supporting the channel and the changes to Patreon, Chaotic Story has been a long time full-blown supporter of the channel.
Yes, they have, and we're thankful for them.
Thank you so much. Archon lives, I'm going to shout out a few people before I forget. Ipacho, always. What time is it where you're at, Ipacho? Mr. Cultus is here, Aberlin's here, and 53 Elkie. Is that Elkie? That's one of
that's Selkie.
Selkie. Okay,
that's Selkie. Yeah, that's our semi-professional meme crafter.
Right, I knew that was out of that group somewhere.
Yeah, they're incredible. Their memes are life. Like they're so good.
So the question, before I forget, that was asked before we even got the stream started was, what inspired you to choose this particular time period and setting?
Well, I'm going to absolutely out myself here and say fucking Fallout. Like that's what started my interest in this like heavily nuclear fetishized Americana. And this game started a year ago, and at least in America, there's been a lot of, shall we subtly say, contentious conversation about what is America, what was America. You know, it's because depending on what part of the American demographic you sample from, their opinion of the 50s leading into the 60s is profoundly different, terrifyingly different, frankly. And so it just felt like a great place. You know, it's Las Vegas. It's just, you know, it's really finding its legs. One of the world's, you know, largest and most expansive set of nuclear tests.
I love that.
It farting around, like, because the other, and I will get to like what came before this. It was just one of those, like, this has everything we would want in terms of a space to play KULT in, and it lines up and it works. So, and it's glamorous. And then I found out about the history of the Tropicana, which was absolutely begun with organized crime money. There's a pretty interesting story there. And so it was one of those, like, oh, like, there's this beautiful brand new hotel and casino. Someone was found with a list of, like, the whole, like, a gangster was shot and he had a list of names with money payouts, like, in his pocket. That's real.
Right.
Like, but that was the launching point. That's the deflection point for our realities. And I thought, well, just how easy would it be to throw another name on there? You know, that worked out, because that put us in a new location, just like you did a great job where you grabbed some of the debrief. It puts us in a new location. It recenters things. It refocuses things. It allows for us to start in a place that feels fresh and new. And
I like it. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Cultus. It is a perfect setting. I had, after we did Manhattan, my second spin at Long Strange Trip was starting in Vegas, 72.
Oh, yeah.
So another good period. Is there going to be like you can not give too many spoilers, because of course you never know where the Van Horsts are going to go.
No one knows. They don't even know.
But thinking of one of their goals as like to rule Metropolis, and considering Vegas's proximity to, you know, that side of things, is there like a big conflict between the status quo organized mafia in Vegas that the Van Horsts are going to run up against in a much stronger fashion, maybe?
There is a chance. A lot of it, one of the things that I've enjoyed asking is, what do you want your struggles to look like? Like, what kind of a conflict do you want? And so it's kind of like, so they've been saying, well, I want to struggle with this, or I want to deal with this, or I want to interact with this in a combative way. And so that's, you know, it's very much, I'm a service sadist. Like, just tell me how you want to be hurt, right, and, you know, I'll make it happen for you. But that's really what a lot of it boils down to, is it's clearly the mafia is heavily involved in the storyline. And if they say, yeah, we want problems with the mob. Like, right, we want the tinny trombone solo. We want Marlon Brando with cotton balls in his cheeks. We want I don't know, we want a fucking Osgood head, right, in our bed when we wake up.
Yes.
You know, and if they say, I want it, then say, okay, you get it.
I like that. Yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking, just because of the whole power structure and the way kind of KULT goes, you know, with how that whole power structure. I didn't notice if we had any more questions. And if you got a question in chat,
there was a couple of really good, like, interview starting questions way up at the top.
I might have missed.
I didn't. I saw them. Yeah. Archon Lives asked, what inspired you to choose this particular time and setting? And I answered that. And then, is it Paco or Pacho?
I say
because
Ipacho because there's an I in front of it.
Okay, you're right. But what inspired me to create this adventure? It is just it's like it's gonna be so trite. It's a desire to make my friends have fun. That's essentially what it started as. Is I found Red Moon role playing about a third of the way through Black Madonna, their fantastic run of the Black Madonna, and so I listened to that, and that was my introduction to KULT. Which I'm not going to lie, being introduced to KULT via a vintage game, as much as like it causes me physical pain to describe like the Berlin Wall era as vintage, like that hurts. But so that's whatever your first experience is when, especially with horror settings, it can be very, transformative, or it really defines a lot of things for you. So
I had never run a horror game before. When I was doing 5e, I'm not a game master. When I started this 2+ years ago, I hadn't picked up and played a game with another person since 92.
I'm of the opinion that you're the GM as soon as you say you guys want to play a game. I'm thinking about running. Like that's all you have to do. Like there's no test.
Right.
You don't have to there's no fucking GM CDL.
I
if you're on one side of the character screen and a couple of your friends are on the other side, you're the GM. Like that's it. Like here's your name tag. Drink your water.
That I can do. That I have no problem. But I constantly go off book, which has been good because it gives me a conversation topic, and I'm not afraid to say, "Oh yeah, I screwed that rule up." But I get comments. Though, if you peruse through my KULT games on YouTube, there will be comments. Met some great ones. Peter Samuelson, who did the experiment, is in Sweden and. Sweden, Norway, somewhere over there. I get them confused. And it was a critique of my combat rolling. I had them messed up and brought him into the family. So that was absolutely fabulous. House rules evolved the game. Yeah, you're right, Catholic Story. And I don't stress out about it. I think that's the best thing. And my whole goal is to get to a diceless game or something. That's one of the things I liked about KULT was I didn't have to roll dice anymore, which I thought was fabulous.
Well, I've said it a couple times, and it's something that is informing both the way I run games and the way I've done a little bit of game design, is that if failure isn't interesting, then don't involve the dice. If it's one of those like, okay, like the classic example is AD&D or second edition Dungeons and Dragons. And depending on how aggressive you were with, you don't have the proficiency and therefore you don't have that skill.
Right.
You've made all of your level 1 adventures and you've got your Final Fantasy party, you've got fighter, white mage, black mage, rogue or martial artist. Like you've got your little party and everybody's all excited. And you go, okay, it's a first night. Well, I'll take the first watch. And you get the beginning of the role play and you kind of get all that. And then the GM goes, do any of you know how to make a fire?
Right.
I don't think that's fun.
Right.
Unless you're going to get some kind of a story about it. If it's just a gotcha, like
I think
waiting for people to mess up and then going, I knew you were going to make that mistake and I let you, like, I'm fairly certain that's on a list of emotional abuse behaviors.
Probably so. It's like encumbrance was always a rule that I immediately threw in the floor. And I think that some of those rules those stem back to the origins of the game when it was all that tactical combat, gaming that Gygax and Arneson and all of them were doing with military maneuvers and stuff, and everything was so regimented, and some of that has bled over. But our thing here at TTRP Theater has always been about the story. I've always said sacrifice the rules if you get a good story out of it. And catching myself in some of those situations where I think, man, Dungeons and Dragons taught me to roll a dice here. right? Like I'm supposed to. And I'm thinking, man, what should I roll? And Duke does this. I tease Duke about it a little bit because Duke will roll a dice like Two-Face flips a coin.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like he'll be like just troubled with an in the moment decision and will roll a dice to make the decision for him, even if it has nothing to do with what's going on. He'll just do it for himself sometimes, which I find hilarious.
Well, decision paralysis is a thing. And sometimes if you just create a simple binary system to get your brain, up and off the curb, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great.
But and he'll go to tell you how terrible my hard moves are in KULT. That he will probably claim that I've never actually done a true hard move. How hard have you been on your players? Sometimes I don't get to listen all the way through because I'm like paying attention to something else, or if the stream goes crazy or somebody drops off or something.
I'm not as hard on them as they are on themselves. Like I feel like a lot of what I'm doing is giving the Van Horsts as much rope as they want to hang themselves.
Right.
And commentary and just giving, I feel like a lot of what I do is give them a space that lets them feel all the different things and emote the different emotes that they want to do, is just making sure that the space that they're in, both like in terms of where the Van Horsts are as characters and where the players are mentally, is just making sure that they're in the right space, and
I love that sandbox thing. I've been trying to get back to that. I was really kind of going a railroady path for a long time, focusing more on show than game. But
well, you saved me from that. Hilariously enough, you just need a Curtis, because I think I've said it before. It's I think it was Mitch was like the initial point of contact.
Yeah,
and he was like, no, they were like, do you have anything? Do you have any videos? Or I'm like, oh, well, yeah, one of our players recorded it. Jesse, if you see this, thank you for recording that. That's the fourth Van Horst, who's in graduate school. And if you're watching this, do your fucking homework. So, she sent me a big pile of these just like raw 4.5 hour, like unedited, ugly, like just straight, unpasteurized, unhomogenized gameplay. And I cut one up a whole bunch, and it was extremely stressful, and my computer barely handled it. And like it crashed while compiling the video several times. Right. Like I was like, my computer was next to my Xbox, and I was playing the video game, and I would finish the mission, and I would put the thing down, and I would go over and look at the computer, and it would go, still chugging. And I was in full panic mode because I was like, I don't know how to do Twitch. I don't know how to do any of this. Oh no, what the hell did I sign up for?
Right.
And it was a week or two before game, and I was like looking up things and trying to figure out, I'm like, I don't even know if my computer could handle this because I've got a rink-a-dink 9000 laptop. And I was really stressing out. And then out of nowhere, Curtis messaged me, and he's like, hey, I'm Curtis. I'm going to be doing I'm going to be handling the technical stuff for your stream. All you got to do is just show up kind of on time and just run a game. And let me worry about the nuts and bolts of streaming. I was like, thank you. I love you.
Easy peasy.
But because of that, all I have to do is show up and run a game. So I feel like I have that leg up, on you, in that I just log into Zoom and run a game.
Right.
I don't have to do like all this background stuff and make sure the squares are inside the right squares, I don't have to do any of that.
Yes.
Because I absolutely couldn't. Like Curtis is more important to Wrath and Tears than I am. Like I could be run over by a moose, but as long as he runs the fucking bumpers and puts us up online, be able to figure it out.
There are streams out there that look a lot worse than ours that get more viewers. I enjoy doing that part of it as well.
I refuse to stress out about viewers.
Yeah,
it's
always worrying about it after a while.
It's always fun to see numbers go up and to look at go and look at the views. Like the episode 1 of the game has like 600 and something views on YouTube, and that was cool to get on there and be like, wow, 600 views.
Yeah.
Even if 10% of them are rewatches or 20% are rewatches, that's like 400 or 500 people. That's so cool. But my first objective is to run a really good game for my friends.
Right.
And so like if the people on the screen are happy with what we're doing, I'm content. And if 10 people, hop on and they're like, oh my gosh, that was really cool. Or if 2 people hop on, or 50 or 1,000, it's going to be the same thing for me. Right.
Yeah. We've got a solid group of supporters. So it tells me I'm doing something right, on the right path. My focus has changed so many different times since the beginning, and been discussing it with Duke and Rashid and some others about some other things, the future, and thinking about leaning more of our live streaming towards maybe nonprofit, kind of going that angle. Mental health is a real big, huge thing to me. So I'm thinking of mental health charities. And I don't know, that's kind of where our vision is on that. And you have been like just, you and Adam both were just like, I get embarrassed sometimes when I'll be playing my game and I'll do some just terrible, horrible things. Gross, disgusting. My very first show, I had the finger of a kid's finger was severed and lying on a table that they discovered. And I hadn't even the wherewithal to be thinking of player safety or anything like that. But when those of you who came from more of the Larp community, you guys were all safety centered and kind of built out around that. And you even more, I think, than Adam. Adam's really good, but he's so familiar with his people that there's a whole lot of it that doesn't get said. But you, and I know that you guys made a conscious decision to do this, have always done a really good job of breaking down those moments, and then the debriefs. You notice at the end of the video, I said hard debriefs for over a year or something like that.
Yeah, that was great.
Because of what Clara said. I thought that was hilarious. It needs to be a t-shirt. And it's really blown me away. I mean, I've tried to get to be more like you in some of those regards. Some of my safety calls are about 15 seconds too late sometimes, but I do recognize them and get them out there. When did you decide that was the focus you were going to take? I mean, because if you old school gamers, we didn't think about that stuff, and there are old school gamers now who will say we ruined KULT by bringing that stuff into the game. You know what I mean? Edgelords and that kind of stuff.
I try not to say too many arrogant things. Right. It's like pride is a poison, right. As Matthew has shown us for a year. But I'd like to think that it's pretty fair to say that at least the Place of Wrath and Tears can show you that you can get pretty much as dark as any page in the rule book gets, while still using a full toolbox of safety mechanics.
Yeah.
And that's,
Well, I'm from Southwest Missouri. I'm from the Heartland, and very conservative. Grew up in the country. As far as upbringing goes, it wasn't until I left Southwest Missouri and ventured out into other parts of the country and other big cities and parts of the world and such that I realized that there's a whole slew of different people out there, and they're all wonderful. And you come back to this part of the country, not so many people advance like that over the 20 years.
But yeah, I mean, I've had to do some learning. Like I'm a white Anglo-Saxon, used to be Protestant, right? I'm a club that I've used to beat other people with, and other people have used people like me as a club to beat people with. And I had to unfuck my head. There's friends that I've done harm to unthinkingly that still bother the hell out of me. Right. And, I guess, the thing you can do is you've got to own the damage that you do, and then just strive to never make that number go any higher. Right. And understand, I've hurt a friend's feelings, or I've damaged their, even if it's just, I've damaged their enjoyment of this shared hobby that we have. Like that's how burnout happens. That's how you lose good role players and good players to discomfort and burnout.
it drives me crazy if I get to the end of the game and I think one person didn't look like they were having that much fun tonight, and it will just haunt me. And I will start like, okay, what do I need to do to tweak it the next session, right? To steer things, you know what I mean? I start like trying to make adjustments sometimes.
I feel like the answer to that is talk to the player.
Yeah, that's usually
check in and just say, hey, I was thinking about it at game, and I wasn't getting the normal indications that you were having a lot of fun. What's up? And you initiate that conversation, and because maybe they would go, I was feeling unwell physically. I was unwell. Right. I had a really terrible day at work. I had to communicate with someone that's exhausting, and like I had a good time, but it's just the amount of energy that I had to bring to anything in this moment of my life was going to be low.
Yeah.
So
it's a challenge. Duke is my my safety tube, my life raft. For a lot of these things, I usually will bounce an idea off of him so he can clear my head. I've got, my mental health issues with anxiety and like, I start preconceiving notions that people are thinking things. And then if they tell me that, oh, no, you're fine, then I'll be thinking, oh, wait, no, you're just trying to save my feelings or something. That's usually how my twisted process goes. But I'm aware of it and correcting it and working on it. So, this has always been kind of a challenge for me is, reading players and knowing if I nailed it, you know what I mean? Because I'm an actor, performer, media person. What I put out, it's all to make people smile.
Yeah, I want to tell you a story about that from kind of like the unaired season of Wrath and Tears. We had gotten into what was essentially the first half of a 2-part classic season finale, where the middle is the cliffhanger. And I had started interacting with them in a really high energy, high intention, high build-up scene. And we were like 5 minutes into this incredibly intense conversation, and my brain went, dude, you are having a different conversation than your players are.
Right.
Like it felt like we were having 2 separate conversations in parallel, but not in contact. And, we were an hour and 10 minutes into game. We were very excited. We had already, agreed to stream. So we were on a timer, and I said, guys, I can't. I'm sorry. I have to stop. I'm done. I don't know what's up with me. I don't know what's up with my brain, but I literally cannot run this game tonight. Like, I'm fine. I'm healthy. I'm safe. But there is something going on in my head that I cannot create the runtime environment, and I'm really sorry, but we're just going to have to stop, and we're going to have to, to reassess. And immediately all 3 of them were like, okay, fine, cool, great. Like, their body language completely shifted. Everybody immediately dropped character in the body language,
right.
Are you okay? Like, what's up? And I think it was Kate that said, I feel better having heard you say no. Hearing you say, I am using the safety mechanics. I am saying that I'm not okay, because now you've proven no's prove yeses.
Right.
And so if someone has said, I am in this moment uncomfortable, I am in this moment, not like, dude, I am straight up not having a good time. What that is what you take from that is, one, that's a moment to learn from, but also that tells you to trust their yeses. Because now that you've seen that they're willing to say, I'm not okay, and this isn't okay, that is what empowers you to trust that they're yeses, even if you've got a brain weasel that's telling you that that's a fake yes. You can apply logic to it and go, no, because they've used the safety mechanics. They've stopped a scene. They've stopped a game. They've asked for a recalibration, whatever. So I know that they know how. I know that they've done it. We've all responded well. It hasn't ruined the game. And so, no's empower yeses, or, reds empower greens. Pick your stop and start words as appropriate, but that's part of it. we have, like, when we started talking, one of the very first things whenever I started designing the whole big storyline, I was like, here is my list of things that I think are going to be in the game. And it was like 45 lines long. I was like, here's all the things that my brain has come up with that might be involved in this game. Are any of these are any of these reds or yellows or stops or hard limits or uncomfortables, or we need to talk about this, or da 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 da. So
you do really good at it.
Erica runs the safety mechanics at the LARP I go to.
Right.
She's, in many ways, she's the first person I ever met that did really heavy duty LARP safety mechanics. Because I ran Vampire the Masquerade in a monthly Parlor LARP for something like 17, 18 years. It was such a long time.
How many people are in a Parlor LARP? I'm assuming that's
we went anywhere from 5 to like 35 people.
Oh, Jesus.
Parlor is a genre,
right,
or a method of LARPing. That's that classic, the old White Wolf LARP, the classic White Wolf LARP,
right,
where things like the Night in Question evolved out of. Although there are other adjectives that are applied to things like the Night in Question better than Parlor, but that's.
You're right, Chaotic Story, about the method acting. I'll have to tell you a story. My only method acting experience when I was in school for theater, method acting was actually taught as sort of a bad thing. It is presentation. So, but I always laugh because I was in Noises Off, and I played the character of Gary Lejeune. So I was the one that had to fall down the stairs. I don't know, 3-4 times every show. So
no,
that was, by the end of it, I was in a knee brace, but I loved it. It was a fun time. But that's for a different story. One question that I did want to make sure and I think I've asked you this before, but I want to hear it again because I forgot the answer, is where did the name The Place of Wrath and Tears come from?
The Place of Wrath and Tears actually is a line from a poem called Invictus by, I think it's William Ernest Henley, but I've got a bad memory for some things. I'm almost right. William Ernest Henley. Yeah. It's pretty short, and I think it's great. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit, from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade. And yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's going on my list.
It's a good little poem. And I like it. But also because this was supposed to be 5 fucking games. Like, this was supposed to be like a 5-game, like, micro session, like to run KULT. And now we're here, like, probably sneaking up on 40 sessions. And I'm not upset about it, but it's funny.
At about 3 hours a piece on average. So
it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of time. But where the game ended, where the game was supposed to end,
right
before all of this started again, it was essentially, it didn't end up that way because we kind of leaned into the fourth corner. But what it was supposed to be, it was essentially going to be this choice where it's like, do you do this or do you do this? Like, do you accept the power or do you turn away from it because it's power that comes with shackles? And once we realized that we were streaming, and it gave us a different place. And so when they finished up the first game, a lot of it was, we want our power back. We want our autonomy back. We want our strength. Like these people that abused us and hurt our father, who is as complicated as the relationship was with Malus von Horst, was their father, and did all these terrible things. Like, this will not stand.
When did they decide they wanted to go back and get Metropolis? Was that before you? Was that in the prologue or the first season that you guys played on your own, or was that?
It was a throwaway, never going to get it goal in the first season, and then as we progressed further, and as things got further along, it would kind of be like, no, hell yeah, let's just reach for it. Let's Icarus this son of a bitch. Let's see what happens. So, but the game, I will openly admit that I am a Metropolis fanboy. Out of all of the places that aren't Earth in the cult book, Metropolis is my favorite.
You read the original source book?
I have read parts of it. It is an experience.
Yes, and it gives you a completely different perspective on a lot of different things too, which I absolutely love. So they're getting ready to start using Enlightened Abilities. Is that what I heard you guys discussing at the end of episode 23?
Yeah. We've busted open that dark and terrible chapter, literally, in the book, and we're starting to pick through it.
I've dipped my toe in it.
It's a lot. I think a lot of the struggle with it, and air quotes struggle, or the thing that requires a lot of effort, is the refinement of character concept that going to that tier of play requires, because it's not like a traditional D&D or D&D like, where you're like, I'm a whatever, and then maybe I'm an advanced whatever, or I'm a subtype of whatever, because or maybe I'm a prestige class. Like, we'll just stick with the D&D. But very much so in many ways, you kind of rink-a-dink along in the same kind of groove. Role play changes everything, but generally you kind of stay on the same sort of trajectory. But to me, in playing an enlightened character, it requires a really aggressive refinement of what your character is. Because it's the pupil stage. It's that metamorphic stage between sleeper, all the way unaware of the world, and then all the way back to I think it's awakened. Yeah. Full striding, post-human god creature walking the plains. And to me, enlightenment is that metamorphic period. And in KULT, metamorphosis comes through trauma and suffering. And so essentially, to me, enlightenment, that tier, is that spot where your traumas start to change you from human. And there's a lot of unpacking there. And so it's been a lot, especially when you have players like I am lucky to have, that create very complex, very multi-layered characters that respond to the story and evolve and have their opinions and their thoughts change.
Right. Because in my eye, it's like
it's good work, but it's work.
They're ultimately getting to their true character. I mean, there's like some paradigm shifts that have to happen in their mind as they advance through these things. Once they, that was always the thing that I've been trying to, you would talk to my players about behind the scenes was, your characters, there was a time when they'd never seen a monster, a scary thing. They saw horror, like we all see horror.
Yes.
But at a certain point, when you see that, and then it clicks in your head that you're not crazy and that's real, then your paradigm shifts. You've stepped over into a new way of thinking about everything that you see. And then enlightenment, it changes. And then, to become fully aware, awakened, I get the two confused at the end. I believe it's like at that point you couldn't even see the illusion. You can't even go back into the illusion. You are then once again part of reality, Metropolis or wherever it is that you happen to be, I suppose, as that is whatever it is, which is nuts. You know what I mean? Like what is Matthew Van Horst going to be when he is at that stage? Who is Matthew Van Horst when he's shed the Van Horst exoskeleton?
There's a lot there, and it's multiple layers and it's multiple directions. And so, you'll just have to watch and find out. Because I'm absolutely not going to spoil the hard work that the players have done in it. You just y'all don't know the debriefs. Like y'all don't Curtis has seen some of it, but y'all don't hear this. Elon is a fantastic person, and Elon is as far from Matthew and Horst as any other American male human is capable of possibly being. And we'll finish and would have just been absolutely just tracking on the Geiger counter, rotten and toxic for 2.5 hours. And then the stream will end and he'll just go, "Oh God, he's so terrible."
Yes.
And he'll just ugh for a minute straight. And he deserves it because it's really hard.
Yeah.
And they're all leaning into a bunch of toxic Americana, and I love it, but it's a lot.
I recommend the story a lot, and I always tell them you're going to come across some stuff that is going to be sort of shocking, and you may wonder, especially for people who I know aren't familiar with role play so much. People I'm just trying to get interested in the whole idea of the fiction part.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, remember, much like a movie, a character, an actor is going to play a terrible, terrible character, and they're going to feel awful when they get done. That doesn't mean they can empathize or sympathize or that they agree or whatever it is with those particular things. And Matthew and Clara, too, have both been, especially after the most extreme episodes at the end of them, they are both like, I got to get this washed off of me.
Yeah. A lot of, yes, they're going through a lot of things that Bethany went through in the earlier game, because part of what Bethany has come through is going through the emotional process. A lot of the things that she's seeing have something in truth. And so the catharsis of that understanding is something that Bethany's on the other side of. I mean, she's still dealing with and unpacking it, but that's something that she's on the other side of.
Nice.
And yeah.
Well, your Zoom is starting to glitch just a smidge, a little more frequently. We've capped a quarter over our hour, which is no big deal. I've enjoyed this conversation. What can you tease? I'm pretty. Most of those were just me fishing for teases.
I know.
But can you tease anything for the fans?
I will. If we've got time, there's still a couple more questions that I want to answer.
Oh, yes.
Because they're really good questions.
Definitely.
Archon Lives asks, what do you, Ben, feel is a strength you bring to the narrative table? It's hard to talk about myself. I think that I'm good at describing things. I think that the language and the style that I use to describe some of the terrible things is pretty good. I think that I'm a fairly good negotiator. I mean, in terms of working with my players and my friends to make sure that we're all having fun. I mean, it doesn't matter how good the language is. It doesn't matter how fantastic your scene setting is. It doesn't matter how big of a paranoia style wall with yarn and string on it and photographs you have. If the people at the table aren't having fun,
wasting time.
There's the value of the labor that anyone brings to the gaming table, be it a player or a game runner. The value of the labor, in my opinion, is measured first and finally against the enjoyment of the table. And for some people, like, it's D&D, like, okay, we killed the monster, like we killed a dragon. That was awesome. It was a tactical challenge. It was a narrative challenge. We had a lot of fun.
Right.
Other games in the fill in the blank punk, you've got, Shadowrun, Cyberpunk itself, the splatterpunk of Slay Industries, the gothic punk of the original World of Darkness stuff. You've got all of these options, and you have to have fun. Like happy players, miserable characters.
Right. Yeah, that's why I picked up Mork Borg. That's been my new guilty pleasure lately that I've been getting into. It's quite a rabbit hole, Mork Borg.
It's a thing.
Yeah, it is. I'm actually trying to gear a more serious sort of thing. Because I've always wanted to do like this grimdark fantasy. I just can't handle the weight of 5e. There's just so much stuff. And knowing that there's so much stuff out there that I'm dropping marbles messes with my head. So I'm just not ready for 5e. I'm not saying that I never will. I will at some point. I'm not there yet. So I'm trying to twist Mork Borg around. What were the other questions? Did you see?
One of the interesting questions, Selkie asked me, what scares me?
Oh yeah.
Which is that's a tough question. Yeah. What to you is the scariest part of the game? I mean, the scariest part of the game is the fact that I'm not in control. It's like, I want control. I like being in control. And so, it's remembering it, like continue. And because it's not like I woke up a year ago and said, I trust Kate and Erica and Elon, and I never have to undergo this round of thought ever again. It's when you're running a game, especially when you're running a game that's as intense and radical and heavy and dark and complex and negotiated as Wrath and Tears, you have to actively and continually make a choice to trust everyone else at the table.
Right.
You have to actively, when I'm, in the throes of the passions of creation and I'm going bonkers on describing something and it's gross or it's terrible. Like Last had an incredibly heavy ending.
Mm-hmm.
That we're still chewing on and unpacking and talking how we're going to move forward with. And I mean, it's good talk, but very talk. It's in moments like that when we're really reaching down into the heavy stuff that I have to go. I am going to continue to choose to trust my players, and specifically, I am going to trust them to use safety mechanics. That they're going to say yellow, red. They're going to do a nonverbal X. They're going to thumbs down. I'm going to get some kind of an immediate response from them if we ever go into a place that's not good. So, not having complete and perfect, like omniscient control over my surroundings at all times is the scariest thing to me. The scariest, but in a less philosophical answer, what's the scariest part of the setting? That's the demiurge. That's Metropolis. Metropolis is the scariest fucking place in the setting, in my opinion. Less for the scenery and more for the implication of what it means and why it's the way it is, and why it's breaking down and why it's falling apart and why there's an empty throne and a big black pit in the middle of it and all of those other things. Like it's like if/when they get to Metropolis for an extended period of time, it's not going to get any better. Like it is not the land of milk and honey. It is a bad, terrible, awful, ugly, no good, very bad place. And the realization that they're going to have when they get to their promised land, and it's a fucking hellhole, is going to be really interesting. Like,
every time
they're going to be Moses, but like they're going to be holding hands and cresting that final hill. And instead of looking over a beautiful place that is going to be somewhere comforting for their people, they're going to go look over, I don't know, something that looks a whole hell of a lot like the Proving Grounds. just craters and death and radiation and horror and man's folly. And so I think it's going to be really good.
What did you do to our home?
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yes. The Pit of Despair. Did anybody else have a question?
Yes, the Pit of Despair.
We get them all if we can.
Yeah, hit us with the questions, dudes. Like dudes, dudettes, and others. Like, give us your thoughts, even if they're dumb. Like, I'm thankful for this chance to actually be able to talk with all of the little brightly colored names on the stream. So the Metropolis episodes are going to be. I actually don't even know if they're going to get to Metropolis. I don't know if that's where they're going to end up. I mean, there are a lot of things that are keeping them in the illusion. So. And I think that's good.
They are into the story. I mean, they're into the game. They're into their characters. That's for sure. I think they will take them as far as they can take them. Yeah.
But it also, once again, is they're going to be chasing their fun, and I'm going to be supporting them in that. Right. And so, whatever is a satisfactory story for the players is going to be where we go. We've all got a fairly good grasp of where we think it's going to go, but that could change, and everybody has to be receptive to that, including myself.
Right. I love it. I mean, you could even actually, this is my ambitious brain. You could even end up with some sort of bizarre political game, at the end, where they're actually, ruling and then dealing with other minutia of that whole situation.
Oh, you don't think that if the Van Horsts actually get to Metropolis, that we're not going to talk about how those 3 toxic, awful people are going to create the worst society ever designed by man in the shattered throne of their own ambition? Oh, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be the worst. It's going to be so much fun.
It needs to be a record of it for sure.
Yeah.
Did you all dig into the time to get your backgrounds going? Did I read that right?
Yes. A lot of it. See, I spent a majority of my life. I moved here, I think, when I was 12, in the greater area of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the United States, which is a fantastic town. And it also has a really incredible history. A large portion of that history being directly related to mind-boggling amounts of steel production. It's the amount of metal that Pittsburgh and the surrounding area has produced and then shipped out. It beggars the imagination. And so we've got all of these fantastic buildings that, the Carnegies and the Mellons and the Fricks and there's a lot of money and some amount of philanthropy and a whole bunch of hubris that made Pittsburgh and designed some of its most iconic looks. And it is a city that is, in my mind, Metropolis looks like Pittsburgh with cancer, because Pittsburgh in and of itself is a place that has been assembled from different times and places and ideas. And so it has that, you've got a 150-year-old bank right next to a aggressive modern piece of architecture. But right across the street is a 1.5-story rink-a-dink gyro, because they're not gyros. I'm sorry, these are gyros. Like a gyro shack that's been around for 50 years. Like, one of the most famous pieces of Western Pennsylvania food is the Permanis Brothers sandwich, which is just like it's a sandwich with a bunch of meat on it, between 2 pieces of thick, squishy Italian bread. But it's got a vinegar-based coleslaw, and it's got fresh cut French fries, natural cut French fries. It's this big. It's an abomination. It's incredibly good. I like mine with Capicola, but it's a weird town, because you have both
free to send me one of those.
The dizzying heights of American prosperity and the terrifying lows of the people that prosperity is built on. And so we spent a lot of time digging into the history of Pittsburgh and locating the Van Horsts as a bloodline inside this time and inside the place. Like so a bunch of that stuff is there. Like, did they go into the time? Yes. I want to say that probably, Erica is the research monkey. She's the one who probably did the most research. But that's also like, that's not a comparative value that's fair. Like, everybody finds their own fun. Like, Elon is terrifyingly good at mimicking toxic masculinity. Like,
he hates that about himself too, I think.
Yeah. Well, if you are masculine in any way, you have to confront it. And you have to, anyone has to confront the results of toxic masculinity. But from a masculine perspective, you have to understand that a lot of the training you've received is not good for you or the people around you. And that just like, you're an IED. You're just shrapnel, just psychic shrapnel if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
And the natural setting of the way a lot of people are brought up is to cause harm to themselves and others. And so I'm thankful for it because, the conversations that Elon and I have had about masculinity and toxic masculinity and what isn't toxic masculinity. Like, I've unpacked some really gross boxes, and I'm thankful for that. So
an education has happened. There's been self-improvement. We're changing lives here.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, especially with the way KULT is designed as a system, and working with the players and doing that. I am a different game runner than I was at the beginning of the pandemic. Like, I am absolutely a different game runner. I'm a different LARPer. Like, meeting Erica at our first LARP together in fall of 2018. Yeah, because we did a whole season of Damarung in 2019, and then we didn't in 2020. I'm all caught up. Meeting her at that game and not knowing each other from anybody else, and just essentially being like, "Hi, this is who I am. I look forward to role playing with you. Like, let's have a brief but strong conversation about what. Like, hi, let's begin our friendship with negotiation." And that's just how it went. And just spinning off of that, and then learning and going into the pandemic. And I did not know Elon or Kate when this game started. So essentially those two friendships have been built from Wrath and Tears.
Nice.
And so, but it was good because it made me to go all the way back to first principles and be like, I do not know these people. I don't know their traumas. I don't know their tragedies. I haven't talked with them for 10 years. I don't already know what's good and bad for them. I don't know what they want in a game. And so that forced me to go back to negotiation and asking, well, what do you want? What's your style? What's your vibe? And
your groove, man.
Yeah, we had a game zero. We had a month of game zero.
I can imagine that. Epacho wants to know what other games you like and which one do you want to narrate?
Ooh. Okay. Which games I like? I like D&D. Like, I'll admit it. D&D does what D&D does very well. Is it the greatest game in the world? No. But does it do generally what it wants to do is adequately? Yeah. D&D and the visibility that D&D creates has gotten a lot of people paid that otherwise would have had to do a job that's less good for their soul. So I'm thankful for it. I have a decades-long autistic hyperfixation / special interest in Games Workshop. I am really developing a pretty serious crush on Age of Sigmar Soulbound, which is their tabletop RPG for their rebooted setting. Because the whole fucking setting is like a combination of stuff that needs to be painted on the side of a panel van and the grimmest, most bonkers ass horror. that you could imagine. And that's what I like about it, because yeah, it is horror, and there are terrible parts of the setting, and there's some real like existential shit. But on the other hand, when you look at the existential horror and you're like, oh my God, that's terrible. I need to take this hammer that's been forged by the storm god and beat its whole ass clean off, and there's a catharsis to that. There's a catharsis to looking at this, at a reality gnawing terror that is the gods of chaos, and being like, yeah, that's scary. But in this circumstance, in this moment, in this simulated environment, I can beat the brakes off you. And that's going to feel really, really good,
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I like it. If Wizards of the Coast does a Planescape reboot or a fucking Dark Sun reboot, I'm going to be absolutely unmanageable for approximately 30 to 60 days. Just be aware, I'm not going to be able to be controlled. Mutant Chronicles, which is a Modifius system now, their 2D20 system. That's another thing that I've read all of the books on obsessively for 25 years, which is interesting because apparently the original Mutant Chronicles and the original KULT were developed by the same people.
Yeah.
Which was really jarring for me, sitting down to read the KULT book. And I'm like, there's Razides in this? There's Nephirites in this? No, there's like, where's this shit? Like, is Mutant Chronicles a later story of KULT? Like, are these connected? They're not. I mean, they just pulled from a lot of the same horror soup, but there was definitely that. There is a moment where I was like, oh my God.
They had their horror toolbox. They just were using the same tools.
Yeah. And so, yeah, Mutant Chronicles is,
Dark Sun has always intrigued me. Planescape has always intrigued me. I just liked the art. I always thought the art was fantastic.
Tony D is a fantastic artist, and Brahm and Baxa.
Yes.
And all of those people are just phenomenal artists.
Literary cinematic influences.
Oh, holy shit. Well, I'm actually, I am holding off on movie influences for Anne Thing. So those are staying in my back pocket for now. But literary influences, I mean, we're gonna start with the basics. We're gonna do Clive Barker. We're gonna do Stephen King. We're going to roll all the way back to the gateway drug of R.L. Stein's Goosebumps.
Yes.
Because I got one every month from the Scholastic Book Club, and I would come home and I would if I would walk home, because I was a walking kid, I would walk home with my Goosebumps book shoved into my nose, doing the little read the book shuffle. And my mom always knew what day the books came home because I was 10 minutes late. And so like I would come home late, and she would look up at, and she'd be like, yeah, there's Ben shuffling home with one of those Goosebumps books shoved in his nose. And that's why it's taken him 10 minutes longer, because he's done the zombie shuffle the whole way home instead of walking at a normal pace. I think that influences are an interesting question, because sometimes when you get an influence, you say, what is the thing that inspires you directly? Clive Barker is a direct inspiration. The Lady in Red, and all of her queer horror, and all of the queer panic that she has incited, was a direct result of how pun intended intimately Clive Barker intertwined his own sexuality with his horror writing. Because you can't read Clive Barker straight. It's impossible. Like, no. You cannot approach it from a hetero perspective, which I think is good. So that was,
I could never even get into Clive Barker, but I was a huge Stephen King freak when I was in high school. So
the Mist, I love that short story, is one of my favorites. Salem's Lot is good. It is pretty good. I have a lot of trouble with children in danger. So it was a struggle finish, and I don't think I'd do it twice. The fucking Gunslinger.
He has a lot of those.
The whole Gunslinger
Tower
series. Yeah, the Dark Tower series. I am a slut for mashups. Like, give me the 2 to 3 songs, all, but give me the heavy,
yeah,
like beady dance version of Somebody to Love by Jefferson Airplane. Like I love all of those mashup stuff. So the when Stephen King did that, it felt really good. I found it very enjoyable. I've read so many Warhammer novels. I've read so many of them. The few that I would outright recommend for anybody is the Eisenhorn trilogy by Dan Abnett, his follow-up, the Ravenor trilogy, and then now going into the Pariah trilogy about Elspeth Bequin. Oh my gosh, if you read the second book at the end of that series, the last 2 words in that book, like I actually screamed out loud at work because I was listening to it as an audiobook, and they were like, big reveal. I was like, oh my God. My boss like looked at me like, no, it's fine. It's the book. It's fine. I have all my fingers. See, it's okay. They're good. If you want to laugh really hard, read the Caiaphas Cain series, where he is a terrible, absolute Blackadder style, irredeemable coward who keeps running away into victory.
Right.
So everyone, but he then keeps getting rewritten in these great, like Soviet Russia style, like hero of the Imperium, big, broad, muscly, like huge pectorals, huge biceps, and he's not. And and they're fun because I like fun stuff. Oh my gosh, what else? Oh, Gideon the Ninth, Gay Space Necromancers, and then the follow-up Harrow the Ninth. Although that one's a hard start, but they're both fantastic books. And I have to say, just like coming from my straight guy perspective, if you really want to hear someone describe both emotional and physical attraction to a lady shape without male gazing it, you need to read Gideon the Ninth. I think it's important if you're going to describe people, especially if you're going to describe them in ways that you want people to respond to emotionally. Gideon the Ninth is a really good book to read.
Your descriptions are really good. I noticed that there was some commenting on that.
Yeah, people like it when I talk, which is nice.
Yeah, I have always said you're the guy with all the words. You will say at least one word per episode that I will have to look up every time.
Yeah,
and I love it. I hunt for them now, and I can usually find 2 if I hunt hard enough. But
Dune. Ooh, okay, Zoom, calm down. All right. Dune is a fantastic book, and I think you should read it. You should read the rest of them at your own peril. That's a heavy series. Margaret Atwood's. If you really, if you have the stomach for it, it's a heavy book. Look it up before you start reading it. But Oryx and Crake is an incredibly powerful novel that challenged the hell out of me every step of the way. It was an uncomfortable read, but it was incredibly good. In addition to a lot of horror, there are a lot of confronting the banality of horror and the ways the characters normalized absolutely heartbreaking traumas that they experienced and how they've normalized them over the years, is a good read. See, now I'm coming up blank. Like, where's my Audible? Because I'm an audiobook guy because I can listen to books at work. So I've listened to more novels than I've read lately.
We are starting to dive into scripted podcasts.
Okay. Yes, I've actually really enjoyed listening to myself talk, which says a lot about how much I'm enjoying. Almost anything by Laird Barron has done a bunch of short story series. I can go on about the podcasts that I like probably for 2 or 3 hours. I've listened to
so many of them.
Well, yeah, but it's also like everyone screams the Magnus Archives. The Magnus Archives is really good. It's inarguably good, but also you need to be listening to Old Gods of Appalachia.
That's the one I'm listening to right now.
It's so good. It has wrung tears out of me, which I do I cry like once a year unless I'm at a Larp. The number of times I've cried with Erica at a LARP is higher than the number of times I've cried in the same amount of time in real life. So take with that. But Old
Come hang
Gods
with
is
me
incredible.
2 or 3 times a day.
Oh gosh, I'd be exhausted. There's a like Behind the Bastards is a really good one. And as much as it's not a narrative podcast, it's an extremely cussy, very left aggressive podcast about horrible people. Mm-hmm. But if you want to understand how groups of people can be talked into doing terrible, awful things in a way that's that to me is very interesting and fun to listen to, it's a good podcast, because you need to understand people to tell horror. So anything that you do to learn about people is going to be Horror Hill, which is a horror anthology podcast. They're hit or miss. There's a 2-parter, either a 2 or 3-parter called The Pill Mill, which in my opinion is very cult, because it focuses on a technically legal but profoundly unethical source of bulk opioid prescriptions in northern Florida, and it is extremely uncomfortable. Yeah. Out of Place is good. One that I really like, and actually this is probably the most literary I get, is there's one called Elder Sign, a weird fiction podcast. And those are 2 dudes, and they go after a lot of classic weird fiction, but they approach it from an actual literary, like lit perspective, not just like, I really like the story and I like the monster in it, but it was like they talk about pacing and referencing and things like that. And so if you want to develop the skill set to critically assess things that you're writing or reading, it's a good thing to listen to. Oh my God, if you're not listening to the Silt Verses, you're objectively wrong. It just I'm just no notes
on my list. I have like the next 3 years already scheduled out of stuff to listen to.
Yeah, the Silt Verses is, in my opinion, in 10 years, like when we talk about like the greatest narrative horror, like the narrative podcasts, it's going to be like the Magnus Archives, and the Silt Verses is going to be right fucking next to it. Video Palace is another one that's a great storyline. It's a short little bursty one. There's so many. Like my list is redonkulous.
Before I did Old Gods, I was listening to Ronstadt, which is a kind of a comedy, but it's got like monsters and that fantasy element of it. Sort of there's a secret society sort of thing. He's like the 911 guy who answers the call for people who have a ghost in their house and stuff like that, and gets wrapped up. It's about 8 episodes long. It's kind of funny, but it has some pretty neat moments. I wanted to see something that kind of had a dark and humorous look at it, and then Old Gods was another one that
Old Gods is so good. There's another one. I forget what it's called because apparently it's not on here right now. Dark Radio?
Yes. I have that on my list as well.
No, that's Darker Days Radio. You're listening to, I can't remember the dude's name. He's Canadian. Wrong station. Right. The wrong station. Why am I not following that? I'm mad at myself because that never should have. And
then there's the one about
listening to the wrong station.
The small town that has like, I think it's called Blackout or something. I don't know. It's a
Blackwood, I think.
He's a local radio DJ, and then they get like cut off from the outside world. There's like a nuclear blast or something. I haven't listened. I just listened to the trailer.
Many.
Lots of cool ones.
So many.
Well, does anyone else have any questions? We've got Ben here. You're going on vacation. Are you guys going to be back in 2 weeks? You said something about going on vacation.
You're going to be back in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like gush. I could gush for another 10 minutes, but I think we're gonna roll tape and say goodnight. Yep. So
we're all gonna run over to Discord and check out Silky's memes. So we'll see you guys over there and here later on. Good night,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you very much.